So thank you so much for joining me today. I'd like to get us started by having you introduce yourself and talk about what your role is here at the University of Michigan.
Sure. My name is Christina Cohen. I'm the Senior Director of Federal Relations for Research for the Office of Research.
Got it. So what sort of experiences have you had in engaging with policy and advocacy in this space?
So I've worked in the policy world for probably the last 15 years across industry, government, and most currently academia.
Yep.
Of that time, I spent 5 years as the health policy advisor for the former Senator Carl Levin.
Oh, wow. So that sounds like you've got quite a range of experiences. So do you have a philosophy or approach in trying to make these interactions effective? Is there something that you keep in mind with, regardless of what sector that you're interacting with, when you're doing policy and advocacy work?
So I try to keep in mind the point of view of the stakeholder. So
Okay.
in this case, in my current role, it's the policymaker. So
Sure.
what is the policymaker interested in? What committees of jurisdiction do they serve on? What are the interests of his constituents, his or her constituents?
Sure.
I keep in mind the interests of the policymaker.
Yep.
And then I try to ensure that the message that we're bringing to him is her is clear.
Yep.
So we want to ensure that if we have an ask, that the ask is very clear. So
Yeah.
if staff walk away and they're confused about what we're asking, then we have not done a good job.
Sure.
If we're trying to raise awareness about an issue that we think the policymaker is interested in, then we try to make sure that we're very clear and concise about that issue. So what are we trying to highlight? What is the impact on the local, state, or nation? What does that translate into jobs, economy, whatnot? So we try to factor in all of the different varying factors that we think that the policymaker would be interested in.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So that sounds like you're really just getting to know your audience in that respect. So how much time do you spend really doing that homework to try and figure out what that individual policymaker's concerns are?
I think we try to build relationships with our policymakers in their offices. And so, it's just paying attention. And when you have an opportunity, we ask their staff, what is your boss interested in? What are the things that you're interested in? We follow the committees of jurisdiction that they're on. What are the committees looking at? What is relevant on the Hill? What is the hot topics on the Hill? And you just constantly, it's a constant dialogue. It's a back and forth where they're asking you questions, you're asking them questions. So I think that if you just stay engaged with the policymakers, it happens naturally, I think, over time. It's like any relationship building.
So that sounds like there are both probably some rewards and challenges with building those types of relationships. Could you outline those a little bit for me?
Well, I think that the rewards, for me at least, is an ideological one, right? I really want to make a positive impact on our nation and society and the greater good. And I think that I'm really lucky to be working for a university that has a longstanding role in doing that. And it's part of the mission of the University of Michigan to serve the nation. And so I feel very lucky. And it's rewarding to advocate for science.
Sure.
Science benefits our health, our stability. It has a societal impact. It's national security. It impacts everything that we do. It ensures that we're a world leader and we're innovating, and it supports our economy. So research impacts our lives in so many different ways. And so it's something that you can feel good about.
Absolutely.
I would say that the challenges, I think, are challenges that are similar in anything that you do. It takes time, and things don't happen overnight. Impact doesn't happen overnight.
Yep.
And so I think that sometimes, we are working on a societal challenge, or we're working on something and we expect change to happen. But change is incremental and change is slow. And I think that can be very frustrating.
Sure. Requires a lot of patience.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So we touched on this a couple of minutes ago, but I want to sort of come back to the idea about who it is that you're interacting with. So you mentioned policymakers and you also mentioned your staff. So can you get really concrete about who it is that you work with in your role?
So we work with legislators, we work with legislators' staff, and we work with agency officials.
Got it. And what's different about these particular individuals compared to other groups that you might interact with, like media people, journalists, or people who are trying to cover government relations?
So I don't typically work with media or journalists, but I would say if I was to guess what the difference is or what the different interests are between, let's say, legislators and media, I would say legislators are very interested in issues that impact their constituents.
Sure.
Media might be more interested in telling two sides of a story or two sides of a debate, or they might be looking for a breakthrough news story or something really innovative or something really new and highlighting something that isn't widely reported on already.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so they're looking for really interesting stories and informing maybe the public on an interesting debate.
So can you dig in a little bit more about the types of things that you do to prepare and how you try to meet that need of interacting with a policymaker to address the needs and concerns of his or her constituents?
So one, as I said, it's knowing your policymaker. So
Yep.
what are they interested in? Having a very clear message and very clear, whether the message is, hey, we're highlighting this because we know it would be of interest to you, or if maybe it's an ask, maybe it's, we've confronted some sort of barrier that makes it hard for our faculty to either educate students or do research. And if we think that the policymaker can help with it, then it's clearly communicating that to them and asking them how, like what should we be doing or how can they help. But it's I think the key is to really having a clear message and knowing what the opportunity is. I think that ultimately staff are extremely busy and they're fielding a lot of meetings and they have a broad constituency that they're interested in or they're concerned about or that they're working with. And so we are very strategic about when we approach them, when we think that they can help us, so we're very mindful of their time and respectful of the time that they have to work with us.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you spend a lot of time preparing and then thinking out when you want to deliver a message and then what that message is so that it has the maximal impact. Is that right?
Or, is it a message that they can help with? Is this a message? So we don't bring, we're very strategic about thinking about, is this something that they can help with? Is this something that we should go to them with? And so there's a lot of thought that goes into how we work with our legislators and their staff. But it's also being responsive. So if, we work, I think one of the reasons why our legislators and their staff work with us is because we're very responsive. So if they're confronted with something or they have a question about something and they reach out to us, they work on very tight timelines.
Yeah.
So I always try to ensure that we're very responsive. We get the information that they're looking for. We've vetted it. They know it's good. They know that it's based on sound research. And so I think part of it is creating a relationship of trust where they trust what we're giving them and we're responsive, timely.
To their needs. So you're really listening to make sure that you're also filling the niche that they need you to fill at any given moment.
Yes, I would say a large role is listening and making sure that we understand what they're looking for also.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's anticipating their needs, right? So if we know that they're really interested in an issue and we know something's coming down a pipeline, we'll also share that with them. And it's a constant collaborative relationship, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So you spoke to this sort of tangentially, but I want to ask the question very directly. It sounds like it really depends on the moment in time and what you think that you want to get across and what's going to be of concern to the legislator. But when you approach them, what kinds of specific goals do you have?
So the goal is maybe the goal is that we just want to highlight something.
Yeah.
We want to highlight something that is happening in their district or in the state that we think that they should be aware of and that they should know about. We could be going to them to share with them, the importance of federal funding for research. And, why is it important?
And the types of benefits that federal funding has had on research in the past, that type of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It could be that, we faced a barrier to, as I mentioned before, we're facing a barrier that is preventing our faculty from being able to do their research or to educate students.
Yeah.
And we talk out that barrier with them and find ways that they could possibly help provide relief.
Yeah.
Or we're highlighting something that is impacting research or something that we're concerned about, or maybe we just know that they're specifically interested in a specific issue, and we want to be able to provide the resources for them, and the guidance, or maybe just so that they know that we have the expertise. And I mean, ultimately the goal is for them to, the University of Michigan's a large research university. We get a lot of federal investments in research, and as part of that, we have a duty to showcase what are we doing with those federal funds. It's important for us to show that we're good stewards of these taxpayer investments, and it's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just to reiterate, it sounds like the goal really depends on a couple of things. It depends on the relationship that you've built up with them in the past and what their current needs are, and making sure that you highlight the value of federal research or federal support of research, and also specific advances that the University of Michigan has. So it sounds like it's really context dependent.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, I want to just thank you for your time, because sharing your thoughts with audience, in particular with these types of audiences, is incredibly valuable. So I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.